How does local content also play a role in that?
Local content is just one of the ingredients of homegrown solution. Local content in terms of the human beings involved, local content in terms of the knowledge base, local content in terms of other resources around. However, we need to be careful of just using the word local content, because over time, this word has been bastardized by some people. We just simply say, oh, local content means bring a local person. Where's the competence? Where's the discipline? Where is the knowledge of the environment? If you do not have all this, you really do not have local content.
Now, let me take on the next one, ADAH Framework, African Renaissance. How do you rate this ADAH Framework as a tool for African Renaissance?
The thing is, as human beings, we like the very complex thing. It makes us feel like we are doing something great. But the truth is, more often than not, the very big things are in the simple things. Great solutions are actually in the simple things. Like someone said, I think simplicity is the best form of is it complexity? Let me not quote wrongly, but I think that's the concept of it. Keep it simple, and that's the beauty of the ADAH framework. When leaders and followers choose to be accountable, corruption becomes a thing that is not a problem anymore. Because in truth, corruption is a symptom of a problem. The real problem is lack of accountability. If you're accountable to your people, then what you call corruption really would not be a problem. So, for me, the simplicity of the ADAH framework is what makes it beautiful.
Talking more about African Renaissance, what other change anchors did you see that could also be of great importance or instrumental to the success of this Renaissance?
Again, I keep talking about simplicity because that's the real thing. If the more, complex these frameworks are, the more difficult to get them to work in real life. So I'll stick with the ADAH framework, but I'll add one or two things more. Number one is Africa is a continent, but Africa is actually a people. And we've been carved out into different areas, and as a result, we've pushed ourselves far one from another. Our strength is in our togetherness. In Africa today, I do not see any single African country that does the same volume of economic exchange as we do with other countries. In Africa today, to travel from Lagos to Yaoundé, you would have to go either to Paris to come back, or thankfully now it's a bit shorter. Well, it's not actually shorter, it's actually longer, but you first go westward before you come back eastward. Typically takes you between 12 to 24 hours actually to go from Lagos to Yaoundé, and that's flying. Now, we're throwing out a lot of value by not acting as a people. I know there's a lot of work going on around it after, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. Traveling from one country in Africa to the other is a Herculean task. People in the US find it easier to come into African countries than a fellow African traveling from one country to the other. We still need visas to travel around. Americans don't need visas to travel to some countries in Africa, while you and I need visa. And it doesn't matter your reputation, it doesn't matter your status in the environment or in the country. You will still need visas to travel. So why that? Again, I'm not saying we should have a borderless system, but I'm saying that the way to grow wealth, the way to accelerate this renaissance that the whole world sees that we don't seem to be seen as Africans, is to ensure that I can trade with my neighbor with less stress. Right now, we trade easier with the US, even with all the tariffs. We trade easier with Europe than we do with our neighbors.
Wow.
That's,
Ooh.
there's no way to justify that.
We're going to be looking at professionals, the leaders across Africa, and even the youth in Africa, right? But let's start with the individual and say, what role do you expect to play so that African Renaissance will become real to us?
Well, I'd say that the individual is actually the building block for everything. Before you go into the family, before you go into society. Again, I alluded to the fact that poverty seems to be weaponized in the environment because we do not have leadership that is truly accountable. And so followership is also not really accountable. But if we are to make this African Renaissance a real thing beyond the potential that it has, the individual needs to go from just being a human being to being a human resource. There's this general saying that Nigeria is blessed with abundant natural resources, and so abundant human and natural resources. I think we should flip that a little bit. Nigeria is blessed with abundant natural resources and a lot of human beings. And I say that because the statistics shows that you have over 20 million children out of school. Those 20 million children out of school are human beings. When you respect the dignity of human beings, you will equip them to be resourceful, and they become human resource. So I want to plead with our leaders to say, forget what has happened in the past. The Renaissance needs to happen. The re-emergence needs to happen. And it will come to pass when you equip your human beings to actually be human resource. Training. Direction. Let them understand the dignity of who they are as human beings. And they want to transit to being resourceful. And when we get that, things change, because it is not what you have in the ground that makes a nation wealthy. It's what you have in between the ears. And when you have a lot of human beings that are not human resources, the things in the ground stays in the ground.